Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear me well. My name is Vibhuti Shrivastava. I am an assistant professor at MD Anderson Cancer Center and associate program director at the School of Health Professions. On behalf of the Cancer Genomic Consortium and its Early Career Initiative, I welcome you all. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that is very important for early career professionals. Our three distinguished panelists are going to share their knowledge and insight on seeking mentorship geared towards a successful career in work and lab environments. This webinar will last approximately 1 hour. Panelists will take turn to address 4 main aspects of this topic. Throughout the webinar, you can actively participate by typing your questions using the Q&A feature of this webinar platform. Your questions and insights are valuable, and we will do our best to address them during the Q&A section at the very end. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the expert panelists who have wealth of experience being mentors to different groups of early career professionals. Our first panelist is Ms. Lisa Tomlin. Lisa is a professional certified coach with affiliation to International Coaching Federation. Joining Lisa, we have Dr. Tracy Castello, who is the Director of Postdoctoral Affairs and Graduate Student Development at the University of South Florida. Finally, completing our panel, we have Dr. Hani Reddy, who is a professor and serves as the chair for the Division of Precision Medicine and Cytogenetics at the Medical College of Wisconsin. We are truly honored to have such an esteemed panel of experts with us today. So without any further delay, I'll now hand over our virtual floor to our first panelist, Ms. Lisa Tomlin.
Hello, good day, everyone. I am Lisa Tomlin. Thank you, Vibhuti. So today, where I'd like us to start is to discuss what we mean by mentorships. Now, everyone during every part of their career can benefit from a mentoring relationship, whether or not you are a mentor or mentee. Today, we're going to focus on being a mentee and how that is a vital part of your career management. Now, a mentor, selecting one and having one in your professional life, the mentor is there to provide you with career advice, to support you, to be a person who is going to provide challenge to you, and is also there to give you additional advice regarding career paths and assignments. This is a very important relationship because it is a confidential and trusted relationship. And finally, it's a relationship that is outside of your manager and outside of other individuals in the organization who are evaluating your performance. So let's just talk about why you would want to leverage a mentor professionally. First, one of the many ways is that you are starting a new position or you are onboarding to a new role. You know, during the interview process, you might even ask your manager that you would like to have a mentoring relationship with someone in the organization. That's okay to do, and that you'll be exploring that as part of your onboarding experience, identifying who should be your mentor. So having a mentor within the first 90 days can help you get off to a successful start in a new position. The other purpose for a mentor is to have someone help you navigate the culture in the organization. Organizational cultures are very fluid. So the culture that's in the organization when you start and maybe after you're there for a few years may change. So a mentor is always going to help you keep the pulse in terms of helping you understand how cultures change and their fluidity inside the organization. The other thing we want to have happen with our coaches, we want them to help, with our mentor, is to help us understand our career path, to provide us with options and be a sounding board for that process. And then last but not least, if you are transitioning into a new leadership role or you are preparing for a promotion, that mentor can be of a valuable assistance to you. The bottom line is you want to find someone you have great chemistry with, and the mentor and the mentoring relationship is a vital part of your overall career management. It will accelerate your career path, and it will help you perform at a very high level in a sustainable way in the organization that you work with. So now I'm going to pass it on to Honey.
Tracy, Lisa. You're muted.
I'm passing it on to Tracy.
That's okay. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. And I'm going to be talking really about the grad student and postdoc clinical fellow training environments and those experiences. So as you're transitioning into that postdoc space. And so I want to say yes to everything that Lisa shared with us. And to add to that, when I think of great mentors, I really think of this as three things. So teaching, coaching, and sponsoring. So sometimes your mentor is teaching or training you on something that you don't know. Sometimes they're coaching you or cheering you so that you get to those next steps or those next skills. And sometimes they're supporting you and they're promoting you and your skill sets. They're connecting you to additional opportunities. So with all of that said, I really also see two types of mentoring, and that is formal and informal. So generally, postdoc mentoring relationships are initiated because the postdoc is seeking an opportunity to either find a job posting or they're reaching out to the mentor directly. That's the formal mentoring, right? These types of positions are frequently identified through word of mouth or network connections. So if you're in your graduate work and you're working towards your terminal degree, you want to be connecting to many. So you want to cast that wide net in your networking. You never know who you're going to meet today, who's going to impact you in the future. Clinical fellows who are then going to engage in research have a similar process. So beyond that formal relationship, which usually is financial, they're your mentor, but they're also paying you. There are many other types of relationships that you can get to. So let's say you're on a training grant and you have those individuals who are running your training program as mentors and they're funding you, but your research mentor is really focused on your research training and moving you towards independence. If you're in your departments or at the institution or beyond your institutions, they're in your field, outside of your field. So there's lots of other opportunities. You're going to run into other faculty, administrators, postdocs, grad students who are going to all serve as mentors in various ways for specific topics. No single mentor can be everything to you. So I really strongly recommend having multiple mentors throughout your training program. And I know Honey has a great mentoring map that's going to get shared in a little bit. And to just think about all the different kinds of mentors who are going to fit into all these categories. And I will pass to Honey, who has some additional comments.
Okay, so hi everyone. Apparently I can't share my video. There's some glitch. It says the host has stopped it. So anyway, hello everyone. Great to be here. Great to be a part of this panel with such experts. So endorse everything that Tracy and Lisa said. And then what I will be talking about a little bit is with how mentoring works or impacts fellows in the clinical fellowship program, right? Those who are doing either their LGG fellowship or their immunology fellowship, but any of the PhDs who go into clinical fellowships and how to work with that. So Lisa talked about what is the need for having a mentor, and Tracy talked about teaching, coaching, and sponsoring. I would like to add to that and say, when you're thinking of informal mentoring, to also think of preemptive guidance mentoring, in that, I've had the opportunity to work with individuals who are looking to go into these clinical fellowships, and they want to be able to understand how to get into these programs, how to get their CV ready for it, how to help with their preparations for the presentations they'll have to do at the interviews and things like that. So just one additional point to add on is the preemptive informal mentoring as you're looking to get into these different programs. And so I think on this particular topic, that's kind of where I would leave it be, and then back to Lisa, who will then start on the next set of questions.
Thank you, honey. So now we're going to dive into what it looks like. What are your responsibilities as a mentee? Now, as you're entering a clinical program, you may have someone assigned to you, or it could be your supervisor who's also going to be the mentor. I'm a big proponent that you can have one or more mentors at one time, providing you support on different topics. So think about that. So for a moment, let's think about, you need another support person. And the mentoring relationship is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to manage. And the way it starts is by first either connecting with the mentor who is assigned to you, or reaching out to someone who's a potential mentor. And you want to do that by setting up a coffee meeting. I know people are busy, but most professionals view a request for mentorship through Slack or email as inappropriate. So you want to quickly track down someone, talk to them, set up a coffee session, and let them know that you want to talk to them about your professional career. And during that meeting, you would explain that you want them to be a mentor for you. And you will then set the terms of the confidential relationship in that meeting. And I think what's most important is to let that person know why you've selected them as a mentor, what value they're bringing to you, and what you want to accomplish in the mentor relationship. And for these conversations, I would leave it to 2 to 3 items that you really want to address. What we are looking for when someone's a great mentee is that they're responsible for setting up the meetings with the mentor. You find out and have an agreement with the mentor how frequently you're going to meet, and you're prompt for those sessions, and you show up for them prepared. Preparation means that you have thought through what the topic is that you'd like to discuss, and if at all possible, as a courtesy to your mentor, you want to send the topics 24 hours a day before in an email, maybe 3 bullets of what you want to discuss. And then you go ahead and have your 30-minute, 40-minute session of discussing your questions. Bring open-ended questions. And remember, what you're looking for from your mentor is insights, advice, information about resources that you can tap into to be successful. You're looking for other people to speak with, so that's referrals to expand your network. And I think what's really important is when you're making decisions about what's next, about the reputation of other organizations and other possibilities that are out there available for you. Another important quality that is essential in the mentoring relationship is the ability to receive constructive feedback. And constructive feedback is given to you in particular ways. It depends on the style of the mentor, but listening to the constructive feedback and be able to have agility and adaptability to address those, the feedback, and put actions to them is really essential. So I'm going to hand it over to Tracy, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So I want to add to this that it's really critical that when you're starting with a new mentor, that you are clear in what that ask is, that, you know, you're really focused on I want to learn this thing from you. And to then follow that up by building the relationship with the individual who's your mentor, committing to meeting with them on a regular basis, and establishing what that looks like, having an open conversation about what the expectations are around, and getting their insights on what it would take to learn this thing that you're reaching out to them about. Being able to share research goals, and your career goals, especially in the context of postdocs and clinical fellowships, that you know where you're going, or you know where you think you're going. Not that can't change, because it absolutely can and very frequently does. But being proactive and setting goals are really, a key piece of this. You don't want to wait for your mentors, if you're in that postdoc training period, to ask you to apply to fellowships or to want to go to a conference. Bring those topics up yourself. And if they say, okay, well, you're not ready, you don't have this thing, you should work towards this, that's great feedback, right? It might be disappointing in the moment that you can't just go jump in and do this thing, but now you have something to do to hit that goal. And you've had that conversation, so you understand what their expectations are on that space before you're at a conference, or before you're, into fellowships, papers, etc. And if you don't know what is missing, right, or what's going to help get you to the next step, and very frequently, as we are growing into these spaces, we don't necessarily know what that looks like. Ask your mentors, and I say mentors like all the mentors, what makes a productive training experience? What's really going to help me take the next step in my career? And you can gather all of that data and understand, how to navigate your career path from the best of all of the data that you're getting, and then leverage all of that to go be amazing in your career yourself. I will echo Lisa's comment. Listen and evaluate listen and evaluate constructive criticism. Use it to improve. I know that we have this point last, so I want to save the rest of what I have, and I will pass to Honey so that we can get a little more insight on this as we're jumping into the next piece. Oh, we have a camera. Yay!
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, so I know I talked about earlier about individuals who are looking to get into clinical fellowships, those who are in clinical fellowships, right? But I want to add a little bit more about what mentees should do as they are looking to go into different programs. And here I talk about, like, when I look at my mentees, I look at two different aspects: those who are already in fellowships, and then a lot of my team members, right? I have a mix of folks who finished their undergrad, folks who've completed their masters, folks who have their PhDs, and everyone has career goals. So identifying those mentors clearly, as both Lisa and Tracy has emphasized, multiple mentors, but then also understanding what works with a given mentor, because each mentor's personality is also different. So if you want to be able to get the maximum out of your mentor, is also taking the time to understand what works or what doesn't work. Is it absolutely needed to send information ahead of 24 hours, or are some mentors a little bit more flexible? Not necessarily all the time. Understanding, when you take that criticism and feedback and you have follow-ups with them, how is it that they are addressing any changes that you have put in place? So figuring out what works best with your mentors, identifying multiple mentors, to reiterate what Tracy and Lisa have said, but then also remember, you need mentors at every stage in your career. We are focused on early career, but even within early career, you want to be thinking in different phases and identifying mentors across the board, not just when you're in your undergrad or grad, but as you're looking to get into programs, and then once you're finishing with those programs. So finding the best fit that works to get you across to your goals, right? And so as we'll talk more about this, back to Lisa for the next point.
Okay, so what qualities do mentors seek in mentees? Well, one of the things I would love to talk about that I think is often not addressed is emotional intelligence. All mentors want to work with people who are emotionally intelligent. And I know that the clinical environment and postdocs are they have a lot of pressure. You're working on um, your projects, you're working on your research, you have papers to deliver. So when we think about mentors, maybe who in your family, who in your friendship or peer network is great to discuss frustrations and get some advice around it, particularly if you have to bring it back to your mentor in a professional context. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the next thing that I think is really important for a mentor is, what is their career path? What is it that they have achieved that you think is going to provide chemistry and alignment with what you're trying to achieve now? A great mentor is a great listener. So it is a quality that you need to seek in terms that they understand what your perspectives are and that they show respect for the perspectives. You're also looking for a person who values the industry and the field, and that you also value and understand the field. So what a mentor is looking for is someone who's a great problem solver, who's going to be accountable, who's going to come to the session with well thought out questions, that they have proactive, action oriented behavior as a result of listening to feedback. We are also looking for people, mentoring people who are emotionally intelligent and can leverage their insights in a way that is meaningful going forward. So I will stop there and pass it on to Tracy.
Thanks. Those are some great qualities. I want to add a little bit to that. I think emotional intelligence is so critical. To that, I want to add that psychological safety, so that you have the ability to say the things that you need to say, and you know that it's a safe space to say those things, really comes from spending time building those relationships and really establishing trust with your mentors. Additional pieces though that I think from as a mentor, like what would I love to have? I would like my mentees to be willing to hear my feedback. I think sometimes it's challenging, right? To be able to share what I want to share as a mentor with that individual, and to make sure that they hear it the way I intend it. I would love to see, and I know my fellow mentors, same thing. We like motivated mentees. We like mentees that have good time management and organizational skills. So if you need to work on your time management and organization to be able to be more efficient, to be able to take those next steps in your career and whatnot, invest the time to learn those pieces and learn what's going to work best for you, because there's 100 different ways to be time managed and organized, from sticky notes on the desk to a to-do list to, Franklin Covey fancy binder to your Outlook calendar to Slack, Trello, whatever, OneNote. There's lots of different ways to be time managed and organized. I should say David Allen in his two-minute rule and getting things done. There's another book. Lots of different ways that you can be that. And the last couple here that I want to throw in before I pass to Honey, coming with a positive attitude. I think your attitude and how you approach your role and how you approach problems is really key. And if you come with that, the rest of the pieces that come along with that, respectfulness, willing to learn, having good communication, and really transparently, saying I need these things, or I don't quite know what I need, being willing to be vulnerable in that space, again, comes from building that relationship, having the trust to be able to say those pieces. And so I know Honey's got a couple of things that she wants to add, and
Thanks, Tracy.
of
So
course,
everything that both Tracy and Lisa said, right? Everyone wants to have that rock star for a mentee. And a few points for the mentees out there is, even if it starts off rocky, I think understanding, identifying the bigger picture and taking the time to figure out how to get it to work with the mentor, having those two-way conversations, knowing it is a safe place, but then building that trust, I think, is a key, because the relationship is only going to get better when there is trust, right? And that is the key. And that's, I think, both Lisa and Tracy mentioned about emotional intelligence and trust. And I think those two are the absolute key to building those positive mentoring relationships. I would also recommend that, in addition to the time management or the project management or things that y'all are doing, is not every meeting has to have a time set and things like that. Sometimes, as you're struggling to go through the process, be proactive and reach out and say, hey, I am really struggling with this, and I'd like to get it to work. Can we figure out how we can move forward on this? So having those proactive conversations also helps. So keywords for you all to remember is trust, safe place, and time management as you are building these relationships to work. So back to Lisa.
Okay, I'm back. How to build from constructive criticism. Wow. Well, first of all, I think that on average, after a mentoring session, it's important for your mentor to be motivational as you establish that relationship. I think that's the third pillar. While they're giving me advice, knowledge, insight, etc., are they motivating you to operate at a higher level, and you're coming out of that meeting more focused, more energized, with more direction? I think that's really important. And it's that energy that allows us to process constructive criticism. And when you hear the constructive criticism, the relationship between you and your mentor should always be an exchange. So while the constructive feedback is being delivered, you have the right to ask intelligent and respectful questions about that feedback. One of the items that I always coach individuals on is, when receiving feedback, ask the person, how have they seen that action, behavior, or situation when working with you? So ask questions about the feedback, how they see it, who does it impact, how does it impact you, and why is it important for you to overcome it? And then I think it's important to find a moment to decompress and process that feedback. And sometimes it's going to take you a day, it may not take you a day, and it may take you 2 or 3 days, but process it and then set up a plan of action. I think Honey talked about that informal touch base. You might just want to come back to your mentor after receiving constructive feedback and say, hey, I'd just like to touch base for 15 minutes. These are some of the actions I think I'm going to take. Can you share with me your perspective on that? And they're probably going to say to you, sounds wonderful, go do it. But always, that's how I would say how to build from constructive criticism. If you find that the criticism is emotionally difficult, then that's where I think going to a trusted peer or friend in the field, is important. Sometimes family members don't understand everything that's going on in your professional life, but I definitely think that having an outlet to deal with the negative feelings you might have, because feelings are important, and it's okay to feel great, confused, or negative about some feedback. But I do think it's important to get that clarity in the conversation, get the illustrations, see how it impacts others, see how it impacts your research or your choices before leaving that meeting, and then process. I'm going to pass it over to Honey or Tracy. Sorry.
That's okay. So I think that's so important. And so I want to reiterate, right? That you do want to have safe spaces to be able to unpack what you've heard. But it really does start, so I'm going to reiterate this too. Listen to the criticism and understand two things: what is being said and where it's coming from. Sometimes when you first get that, and I've got a couple examples here, when you first get that feedback, it's like, right? And there's an emotional response to that. And it's normal, right? So I'm going to park that for a second. But if you can act on that criticism alone, and then great, you can jump forward in that space. If you need help to improve, then ask for that help. It's a training position for postdocs and clinical fellows. You aren't expected to know everything. I think we have these expectations of ourselves, but you aren't. Even in my role today, I'm not expected to know everything. But it's also about how we're moving to independence and how we're growing and how we have a growth mindset as we're moving forward. You will get to the space you want to be if you've leveraged your resources. Sometimes the feedback is incorrect or incomplete. Mentors can be wrong. They might not like to think so, and no one is perfect. So perhaps the feedback you get comes because someone doesn't know all the data or doesn't know all the context. And in that case, you can examine it. Again, let the emotions pass and get to that scientific brain that we all have to say, okay, this is a problem, and I can look at it from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different, flip it upside down, take it apart, put it back together. Where's the kernel of truth that's actually there? Act on that. So I promised you the two examples, right? So, what if you get feedback from a grant reviewer, or the three, right? Reviewer 1, 2, and 3. And there's one that we know about that particular reviewer. Sometimes that review is positive and sometimes it's negative, right? Sometimes, same with a paper or journal, right? You get that reviewer who misses the point of what you wrote entirely, 100%. And so sometimes you want to jump in and you want to think, you just don't understand what I was saying. Okay, but also let's flip that on its head. Maybe you weren't as clear in your writing as you could have been. So maybe there's, again, and somewhere in there's a kernel of truth. So let's think about what that looks like and how do we process that, and how do we take the feedback, find the pieces that are actionable, and then move forward with them. But absolutely leverage your network, leverage your mentors, other mentors in that space, so that you're able to accomplish all the things that you need to accomplish. Now, with that, I will pass it to Honey, and I see that there's some questions populating, so I'm excited to get to this.
Thanks, Tracy and Lisa. So, two aspects to this, right? Is one, how is a mentee getting the criticism, constructive or otherwise? I've had some horror stories with my mentors, who just believed in yelling it out or telling me I'm no good or I'm not doing something right. But then I also think of those mentors who take the time to hold your hand and walk you through, give you that constructive criticism and say, hey, you matter. I understand your goals. And this is why I think these are potential changes that would help you achieve those goals. So depending on how you get your feedback, there are two different options. So one is you can either have a conversation with the mentor and say, hey, I don't really appreciate the way you're giving me feedback. And if things don't change, then moving on to another mentor. But if you're getting feedback constructive feedback within that safe space for you that you truly believe will help you attain your goals. Trying to understand, or again, going back to your mentor or finding those additional mentors who can help you kind of break down that feedback to see how productive changes can be made. And as I look at the questions, I see that a lot of folks want to understand the different types of mentors. And so as we reach the end of it, I do have a map that we'll talk about then. Oh, we're right here. All right. So for those who are thinking about different mentors, this was a very, very useful tool for me that I got from a mentoring workshop. And if you actually look at it, when I filled this out, my spouse actually filled in quite a few of the spots, which is not the right way to do this, right? So you go back and you want to look at it and understand, how do you find mentors for professional development, for emotional support, your safe space, your role models, understanding how you can gain access to opportunities, those mentors who will be your sponsors. These are individuals who are very high in different positions. They are able to provide those recommendation letters to you, but how do you build that rapport with them or build a relationship with them so that they know what you're doing? So networking opportunities at conferences, right? Reaching out to these individuals, taking opportunities to meet with them, sending them your CV at the start, seeing if you can get 5 to 10 minutes with them to just talk about your different goals and how you would like to seek their support. And so this particular mentoring map is actually extremely useful because it helps you with the different aspects that the three of us have touched on, right? There's the informal and the formal mentoring that was talked about. There was the what was it? There was the teaching, coaching, and sponsoring, as well as the preemptive guidance that we talked about. There were the different aspects of mentorship, and I can tell you a type of mentor that I looked for was a social mentor. So coming from a different culture, coming from a totally different understanding of dress code at work and things like that, I actually identified a mentor at Mayo, where I started my research position and my faculty position, and learned a lot from Dr. Rebecca Bahn, who I'm grateful to say still continues to be my mentor. And how to adjust, how to learn, how to integrate with the work culture in the US. So one wants to think outside of the box on how you can bring on mentors. Yes, you need mentors to help you with your career development, given and understood, but you also want to identify those mentors who will complete your circle to be able to take you from point A to point B throughout your career. So something to think about. This is an excellent resource. So trying to fill it out and see where your gaps are. Again, hopefully you'll have more individuals rather than how I had my spouse in multiple places. But kind of building off of this structure and this tool to see how y'all can have a successful network of individuals. Because as y'all are progressing through your career, you'll definitely need those recommendation letters, that advice, and that guidance. I'll now actually ask Tracy and Lisa to turn on their video and unmute themselves and maybe give us some additional insight onto that mentoring map. Tracy, Lisa, additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll start very quickly. First of all, the mentoring map is excellent. And I really wish I had something like that early in my career, because I think when it's very early in your career, it's like a minefield. It's like trying to be an astronaut on the moon and not fall into a crater. And it's only as you build the network and go through the mentoring experiences that you have more insight and stability. So one of the things that I definitely touched upon was that emotional intelligence, emotional support. I also think that peer mentors can be great. I think sponsorship is the trickiest one. Because sponsorship, and this really plays a role probably after your postdocs and when you're hired into an organization, sponsorship is about, are they Are they talking to you or talking about you in a positive way, meaning leadership? Is leadership talking about you in a positive way when you're not in the room? Are you seen as a high potential employee? Are you seen as someone who may be promoted next time? Now, having core mentors who are women, if it's important to you to have a person of color as a mentor who's a professional, they do not have to be in the organization that you work in. They can work at other institutions, but they can give you great advice on how to identify a sponsor in the organization who can help you succeed to the next role. And that's all about the sponsorship. I think that's the most tricky. I've got a lot of different answers to the questions you have. So I'm going to let Tracy weigh in quickly on this mentor map, and then we'll go from there.
So I like the mentor map too. And you know, I don't want anyone to get, you know, scared by, okay, some of these have 4 and 5, there's like 15, 16 in the one list, right? How am I going to fill all this out? This is not a sprint, right? If you have one person in the space and they're fantastic, then great, that's all you need, right? As you're maturing, as you're growing, you're going to change that person, or that person stays, but you've added another person. That's all good. I agree. I love finding the person who looks like me so that I understand what promotion and all of that looks like. But remember, there's a lot of advocates. There's a lot of mentors who can help you get to places, who can support you, that don't look like you. I have male mentors. I'm from all walk. We're all diverse, right? So I come at it from a little bit different perspective, but you know, if you can find that, fantastic, right? If you can't, don't despair. There's lots of ways to get that same knowledge and to have that same support as you're growing in your careers. I think the one thing I would add to this is a shift of perspective, right? So this is sort of the who they are, right? But I like to also think about it as the where they are. So sometimes you're meeting these individuals at conferences. Sometimes you're meeting these individuals because you're going into LinkedIn, let's say, and you're Google searching, and you're thinking, okay, well, I want to get to this stage. So someone else is at that next stage already, and they can talk to me about what that looks like. Or maybe they're 2 steps beyond, right? Or they're you know, so potentially that's a director level or something of someone who might hire you in the future. Right? We never know these things. So I love that. I love that map. I think that's, you know, it's a great start. It's a great space to think about things. And if you have someone who's mentoring you or has advice for you and they don't seem to fit into a bucket, write their name on the list anyway. It's all good.
Tracy, may I add to this?
Yeah.
One way to look at the map without getting overwhelmed, and I love the advice around start small, start with 1, start with 2, is that this map, and I would do this if I was coaching, is great when you leave a conference. Maybe just cross out mentoring map or say conference mentoring map, and you leverage this after a conference, after you've collected cards and you connected on LinkedIn. You start setting up like Zoom meetings with everyone. And as you're talking to everyone post-conference, you could put them in different categories to see where they add value in your network. You could also use this as outcomes from your mentoring meetings with the key mentor who's giving you referrals in the organization. So this becomes like, maybe it's an organizational mentoring map. So this helps each of you kind of break it down so the field isn't so, the football field isn't so big. You kind of just look at, hey, we're getting from the end zone into the 30, then 30 into 45 yard lines. Just different purposes for this map is a good way to tackle it from a coaching perspective.
Great discussion. Thank you so much, Lisa, Tracy, and Honey. I do want to remind our participants, you can use the Q&A feature to type your questions, and we will try to get to all these questions, and we'll try to ask all the questions to the panelists. We do have a few questions here for our panelists, and I'm going to, unless it is specifically asked of a panelist, I'm going to field these questions based on your expertise. I hope that's okay. So this is a question that asks, I have been thinking a lot recently to seek mentors. I'm an early to mid-career professional. I would love to hear your thoughts on what should we seek in a mentor. Should this relationship be based on specific goals we want to achieve? Should this be short-term or long-term goals? Lisa, I'm going to throw it your way first.
Thank you. I would start with, what do I want to achieve first? Is my short-term goal more of a high priority, or is the long-term goal the high priority? Then that should help first define the reason why you would like a mentor. And then if you're mid-career, then having a mentor who's influential inside the organization that you work in is very critical, because you're at a stage in your career where sponsorship may be a factor to get to your next step, your next project, your next role. Who should we seek? So I know this is being recorded. Think about those qualities. The first thing I look at is the career path the individual has had. Are they, if you are a woman or a person of a particular underrepresented nationality, is there someone in your organization who can also add to that perspective? So I would say that's number 2. The person that you choose for a mentor should be respected by others, as well as influential by others, and seen as someone in the organization who has a reputation for being positive and motivational. So maybe think about the criteria that you're looking for. So let me just talk about 2 resources that might help you in this decision-making that I think is overlooked. One is LinkedIn. If you can make the investment for LinkedIn Learning for a period of time, I highly recommend it. Go ahead, search for courses around mentorship and mentees. That is very important. That would be very helpful. Indeed.com might be another resource, because I know they build out a lot of learning content. So that will help you prepare for your decision making.
Thank you, Lisa. The second question is to you, Honey, and can you touch briefly and provide some advice for how a mentee should prepare for a feedback session and ask for feedback? And I will add my own question to it: how not to take the negative feedback personally?
Very tricky, right? And this is where we talked about making sure you have trust in that relationship, and you know that it is a safe space. And honestly, if it is a trusted relationship and it is a safe space, criticism can sometimes be brutal because it is honest. And where we need, or a mentee needs to go from there, is take it in the spirit it was given. Because at the end of the day, you are reaching out to a mentor because you want them to help you succeed in this goal. You value them for the experience and the expertise and everything that they have. So again, but I do want to point out here, it's how it is given as well. You know, it has to be presented in a way too that the mentee is open and you know is able to absorb it. I think yelling at a mentee is not going to work. I can tell you from personal experience, it then does become personal. So I would say having that open-mindedness, having that trust, knowing it's a safe space. And then also, you know, as you keep getting this feedback and you're making those changes, or you're taking that advice and you're able to move forward, one also realizes that, hey, this is my mentor has my back. You know, they are truly telling me what works for me. I see Tracy nodding, so I'm going to kind of bring her into this as well, because, you know, with fellows and individuals in the lab, it also depends on the age of the individual, right? So that is a key factor as well. There are a lot of folks who come into fellowships straight after their PhD, so they are in their late 20s. There are folks who come into fellowships in their 40s, like I went into my fellowship then, and it's a totally different ballgame when you're looking at mentors at that age versus when you're looking at mentors when you're younger. You know, your understanding of life, your understanding of experience, how you take it. So there is no cut and dried one thing fits all, one size fits all, right? It has to be adapted to an individual, and an individual has to understand that this is what works best for me, and this is how I'm going to take it forward. Tracy, your thoughts?
So the thought I had was to add a piece on navigating difficult conversations. So be empowered, have the agency to say, I really need to pause this conversation and we'll pick it up, right? It takes a lot of maturity to get to the space where you feel empowered to say, I need a timeout, right? Like, I need a minute to, right? And, or I say a minute, but, take the time to pause a conversation if it needs to be paused, to unpack it, to have the time to grapple with it. If it's really that challenging a space, your mentor may need the time to pause the conversation and whatnot. And you can come back at it with additional resources or additional thoughts, or you've had the time. I also like to share, extroverts speak to think. So while we're speaking, we're figuring it out. I'm an extrovert. Introverts think to speak. So it's the opposite, right? They need to think about it before they're going to say what they want to say. So in that moment, hey, I actually do need a minute, right? I need to think about, what do I actually want to say to this? Like, how do I want to, reply to the feedback? And it may not come to you right away, and it's all good to take that time and to have that. So I know there's more questions, and I want to jump to those too. So.
Yes.
I just want
Yeah.
to add one on feedback. One of the qualities I think everyone needs to have, and I can see this from the questions, you all have it, is curiosity. I was at a stage in my career where I was a young leader in my first leadership role. So I was working in an academic institution. So I was having in meetings with other administrators and receiving lots of different feedback. And at the same time, I had to lead a team. My curiosity in particular, because my interest is definitely, my expertise is leadership development, but that only developed over time. But at this period, I was way before that. I actually went to Harvard Business Review's bookstore. If you visit www.hbr.org, they have they should have, at the time it was affordable, I brought 3 books: How to Receive Feedback, How to Give Feedback, How to Plan for a Feedback Meeting. Those books were on my shelves for more than a decade. They helped me so much. I can't tell you how valuable that was. I've also spoke about Indeed or LinkedIn, but if some of you are at major research universities, it might be very good to go down to the business school's career office and beg, or go to the library, go to the major library and say, hey, do you have a subscription at the university for Harvard Business Review? I want to do a search on articles about mentoring and mentorships. And then they can pull up those articles for you and you can take them home. I mean, I live by this. I'm going to let somebody else go, but I got some podcasts to give you too, because you're looking for other resources.
That's a wonderful idea, Lisa. We do have a lot of questions, which is great. And Tracy, this next one is for you. If you can just very briefly touch on it, because I do want to cover as many questions as possible. Dr. Castillo mentioned several time management tools. It would be great to hear more about those if we have time. Just a minute, Tracy.
Sure. So I will also say LinkedIn Learning is free at a lot of universities, so check it out. Just go check. So a couple of resources. David Allen, Allen, his book is Getting Things Done. I highly recommend that. Stephen Covey has the 7 Habits of Highly Effective. There's a whole series of them. I can quadruple add, go to HBR. Harvard Business Review has fantastic things, especially in time management and organization. Lots of stuff that's really fantastic for scientists and researchers. I will park it there, but I will say you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share other ideas.
Great, thank you. And for the next question, I'm going to combine these two questions together, and I'm going to send it your way, Honey, to first start touching on this. So these two questions are kind of related. Do you have any advice for early career professionals who are starting to become a mentors themselves? And then, is institutional obligations to be a mentor or establish these relationships for the benefit of the program or actually for the trainees?
So with regards to advice for when you become a mentor yourself, what has worked for me is drawing on experiences where I felt a shortage in individuals who I perceived to be my mentors, right? So understanding what did not work, learning from that, and then saying, okay, I'm going to make sure I am there for my mentee, which also takes a lot of self-reflection as to why certain things worked, why certain things didn't work, and how you want to make best of it. That is something that has worked very well for me. I also do a lot of reading again, but then understanding what your mentee is looking for. So I think it's like any relationship. It's got to work both ways. Both individuals have to put in put in enough of effort. Is it going to be 100% all the time? Not necessarily. And I always say, any relationship that you take, it takes a lot of work and knowing what the other person wants and how you want to get it to work. What was the second part of your question, Vibhuti? Is institutional obligations? Was that the one?
Yes. Is the institutional obligations to be a mentor or establish these relationships for the benefit of the program or for the trainees?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it. The fact that institutions have these programs is to get you going in the first place. You can always expand from that and say, hey, this is the mentor the institution has given to me. Please remember, it also works for the mentor as well as the mentee, because the mentor needs to be able to do a certain number of these, have a certain number of official mentees. But then it gives you a start point, and then it allows you to then expand and say, hey, you know, if I look at all my needs as a mentee, who else can I add to my mentor network? And that's where all the resources that Lisa and Tracy talked about, you know, LinkedIn and Indeed, or I really loved Lisa's idea of using the mentoring map post-conference, right? To see who else you can add into your network that way. So yeah, I draw from my experience. I also draw from experience with my different mentees, because I reach out to them and say, hey, is there anything that we can do better? You know, not everyone is always very honest and open, or at least they say, oh, we no issues. So I take it at face value and I'm like, all right, okay, no issues. But it's a constant learning process for both parties is how I look at it.
Great. Thanks, Honey. So this next question, and really just in 1 minute, Tracy, what resources can we use to evaluate ourselves for what we want or need?
Lots of different opportunities. If you want to, my favorite, Martin Seligman's Positive Psychology coming out of Penn. It's called VIA Character Strengths, or VIA Character Strengths, understanding who you are and what you're bringing. But you could do Myers-Briggs. I like that a lot. Really understand you and how you operate and connect with people. Thomas Kilmann is a conflict instrument. So how do you deal with conflict? So once you know what your preference is, then you can understand other styles and you can adapt to that or whatnot. The DISC, D-I-S-C, is another one's kind of similar to Myers-Briggs. There's Birkman, B-I-R-K-M-A-N. I mean, there's so many different assessments. StrengthsFinder, Gallup Strengths, Skill Scan, Card Sort. There's a ton. I mean, Lisa's nodding because we're both coaches and we both live in this space.
Yeah,
Well, I do have a question for Lisa. Just this last question, just in a few seconds. As your career progresses and you may be interested in expanding your area of interest, how do you go about identifying a sponsor? Just very briefly, just a few seconds.
Bottom line, if you're looking for a sponsor, you need to tell someone you trust that you want to sponsor and why you want that sponsor. Okay. Sometimes your boss is going to support that, or manager is going to support it, and you know your manager better than anyone. If you have any doubt or intuition that they're going to support, not going to support it, then you need to go to that mentor that you have or other people in the relationship and ask for the sponsor. Once you find out who the sponsor is, and based on everyone's response, you can get a very early indication whether or not your next career path is in that organization. Because when you ask for a sponsor, you can start the conversation by, I would like to get a temperature gauge about my reputation, my credibility, and my ability to influence them in the organization. That's what you say to the mentor and the people you're networking with. And that answer will help gauge whether or not they want to link you to a sponsor. Lukewarm responses lets you know that maybe you need to get into market and really focus on those external networks. I hope I answered that.
Yes, and with that, thank you all for being a part of our webinar. I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Lisa Tomlin, Tracy Costello, and Honey Reddy for sharing their expertise and insights with us. Your contributions have been invaluable, and we are grateful for your time and expertise. I would also like to express our appreciation to our engaged audience. As we conclude today's webinar, we encourage you to keep the conversations going. Stay connected with CGC and continue to explore the insights gained here today. Before we say goodbye, please take a moment to provide feedback through the survey link provided here on the screen and in the chat. Your feedback helps us improve and tailor our future webinars to your needs and preferences. Once again, thank you all for attending. We look forward to seeing you at CGC's future events. Wishing you all a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.